At 04:58 a.m. Moscow time, a lone Ukrainian drone was attempting to thread a needle 100 feet above the city of Kommunarka. Its target, a 3-foot-wide ventilation shaft. Missed by 10 feet, and the mission is a catastrophic failure. Missed by 5, and a ruptured gas main turns an entire city block into a crater. The line between strategic genius and a political disaster was being measured in inches. 4 seconds to impact.
But this single drone wasn't the real story. It was the tip of the spear, the last survivor of an invisible war that had been raging for hours, a war against a ghost army of 200 targets that for the most part never existed. This entire operation began not with 200 drones but with just 50. The other 150 were phantom signals, digital ghosts generated by a piece of AI-driven electronic warfare called Ghost Echo. It's software designed with one purpose: to make Russia's $500 million air defense network see things that simply aren't there. The target of this phantom swarm wasn't a power plant or an ammunitions depot. It was a secret command bunker buried deep beneath Kommunarka, a nerve center housing 12 high-ranking officials and the primary logistics server for the entire Moscow military district. Taking it offline would paralyze Russian command for 48 critical hours, triggering a domino effect across the front lines. This mission was on paper impossible. The bunker sat inside a 250-mile S-400 air defense bubble, reinforced by layers of Pantsir S-1 missile systems. Overhead, a battery of A-50 AWACS plane acted as a god in the sky, its look-down radar capable of spotting a drone from 200 miles away. And Moscow itself was a fortress, a concrete canyon of skyscrapers that block radar signals, filled with 12 million civilians where any falling debris could ignite an international incident. So how could Ukraine possibly slip 50 real drones through that shield? At 02 a.m., on a quiet stretch of road near Sumy, the first phase began. Mobile launchers, disguised as commercial trucks, hissed open. The first AM-16 Lyuty drone launched into the night, followed by another every 20 seconds. Across 3 separate sites, a perfectly synchronized operation was unfolding. For every one of the 50 real Lyuty drones climbing into the sky, the Ghost ecosystem generated 3 identical phantom radar signals. Instead of building 200 drones, Ukraine built 50 and bought a software update that made them look like 200. It's the kind of return on investment that would make a Wall Street banker weep. The real drones, each carrying a 110-pound warhead, immediately dropped to just 200 feet, hugging the pine-forested terrain. They were deliberately flying into the S-400's biggest weakness, its Doppler filter. This system is a masterpiece of engineering, capable of tracking ballistic missiles in space, but it has an Achilles heel. The filter is designed to ignore ground clutter, swaying trees, cars on a highway, even wandering livestock. To the S-400's billion-dollar brain, a composite drone flying at 120 miles per hour just 200 feet up looks less like an incoming threat and more like a very ambitious truck driver. The true genius, however, was in the flight path. The swarm didn't fly in a straight line. It split into 3 distinct phantom groups, one vector toward Bryansk, another toward Voronezh, and the largest painting a direct path to Tula. This forced Russian defenders to spread their Pantsir systems thin. Each launcher only carries 12 missiles. They couldn't concentrate their fire because they had no idea which of the 200 threats was real. As the Phantom Swarm kept Russia's long-range radar occupied, 5 real Lyuty drones detached from the main group at 03:30 a.m. These were the Pathfinders. Flying at just 200 feet, they used Moscow's own skyscrapers as a shield, weaving through the concrete canyons where ground-based radar is effectively blind. These drones weren't just carrying bombs, they were digital cartographers. Each was equipped with a LiDAR pod, painting the bunker structure with 1,000 laser points per second. Think of it like the facial recognition on your iPhone, but instead of unlocking your phone, it's building a 3D blueprint to find the precise crack in a 50-foot concrete fortress. Their ace in the hole was an electronic ear, a signet module. Thanks to a previously hacked Russian drone, Ukrainian intelligence knew the exact frequencies used by the bunker's encrypted communications. It was like having the enemy's Wi-Fi password.
Within minutes, the data stream confirmed the target's operational status. The LiDAR found the bullseye, that 3-foot-wide ventilation shaft. The Signet painted the guards, 4 Panzer batteries positioned around the city. The intel was perfect, but they had just tripped a silent alarm. At 04:10 a.m., an S-400 operator near Kaluga finally got a lock. It wasn't a clean signal, it was one of the phantom decoys, but it was enough. Russia's response was immediate and ridiculously expensive. They began firing $100,000 interceptor missiles at software-generated ghosts. The Panzer batteries around Moscow joined in, firing at the phantom signals over Tula, the sky filled with explosions. But what goes up must come down. Debris from the destroyed decoys and multi-million-dollar missiles rained down, causing chaos on the Moscow ring road. The city's mayor, trying to control the narrative, tweeted that everything was fine, while simultaneously ordering Domodedovo Airport shut down, a move costing the Russian economy an estimated $100 million per hour. The element of surprise was gone. Worse, Russia now knew its ground radar was being tricked. The call went out. The ACE was deployed. A Bereev A-50 ADAX plane lumbered into the sky, its powerful look-down radar and thermal sensors slicing through the low-altitude concealment. Ukraine's clever trick was about to become useless. The game had changed. At 04:35 a.m., with the A-50 airborne, the Lutyai drones couldn't hide behind the Earth's curvature anymore. So Ukraine pulled its own ace from the sleeve. They activated Phantom Shift. It was an electronic magic trick. The Ghost Echo system changed the very frequency the phantom signals were broadcasting on. For 45 critical seconds, the S-400 ground radar went completely blind. It's like trying to tune into your favorite radio station, but someone has secretly moved it on the dial. All you get is static. While the ground radar was deaf and dumb, the real Lutyai drones executed a classic beam maneuver, turning to fly perpendicular to the S-400's last known position. This shrinks their already tiny radar signature to almost nothing. It's the electronic equivalent of turning sideways to slip through a narrow doorway. But that still left the A-50's thermal cameras. The solution? Use the enemy city against them. The drones dove deeper into the urban canyons, using the heat rising from Moscow's skyscrapers and industrial zones to mask their own thermal signature. But you can't fool a god in the sky forever. The A-50's computers began filtering out the background heat. Through a gap in the buildings, its thermal camera caught it, a flicker of heat that didn't belong. Then another. It had found them. On the ground, at 04:40 a.m., 10 Panzer S-1 missiles launched in a furious volley, accelerating to Mach 5. This was no longer a chess match, it was a high-speed mugging. The Luty drones scattered, executing pre-programmed evasive maneuvers, but you can't outrun a missile 5 times faster than you are, so they didn't try. Instead, each drone released a towed decoy, an ALE-50. It's a tiny pod designed to scream a thermal signature hotter and more attractive to an incoming missile than the drone itself. It's the thermal equivalent of throwing a flare. The Panzer missiles, hardwired to seek the biggest heat source, fell for the trick. They swerved violently and detonated on the decoys, lighting up the sky 500 feet from their intended targets. But survival had a price. Shrapnel from one blast shredded a Luty's camera lens. At the same instant, Russian jamming signals blanketed the area. The video feeds from 2 more drones dissolved into static. The operators were now flying 3 of their lead assassins half-blind, deep inside the most heavily defended city on the planet. This wasn't a failure, it was part of the plan. For the final 10 seconds of its life, the drone no longer needed a human. Its onboard AI switched to terminal autonomous mode. Stored in its memory was the high-resolution LiDAR map of the target. The drone's camera was now a digital eye, its processor a brain. Its only mission to match the image in its memory to the reality and fly into the bullseye. But genius doesn't make you bulletproof. As the drones began their AI-guided dives, a flash erupted from a rooftop. A Spetsnaz operator, ignoring the electronic chaos, had sighted a drone visually and fired a shoulder-launched Igla-S missile. The heat seeker was true. One of the 5 lead drones vanished in a ball of fire. Now only 4 remained. At 04:57 a.m., the 4 drones screamed towards the ground on pure, unjammable instinct. On the screens of the last-ditch Panzer batteries, this was the moment of absolute chaos. 4 very real targets were diving in, but the Phantom Swarm wasn't finished. This was the trap's final brilliant move. The decoy signals over Kaluga, the ones the Russians had been chasing all night, suddenly pulsed with overwhelming energy. They went from looking like a threat to looking like the main threat. The Panzer operators, sweating under insane pressure, had seconds to make a choice. Do they engage the 4 silent drones diving in front of them, or the 50 screaming phantoms on the horizon? It was a quarterback trying to find his one open receiver while 100 kids are throwing snowballs at his helmet. They made the wrong choice. They fired their last 8 missiles at the biggest, loudest threat on their screens, the Ghost Swarm. The bait was taken. For the 90 seconds it would take them to reload, they were nothing more than spectators. The Russian air defense net didn't just bend, it shattered. The bunker was naked. From the 4 diving drones, 4 165-pound warheads detached and began their unpowered final glide. Their small tails deployed, turning them into miniature guided bombs, locking onto the GPS coordinates with a precision of less than 1 foot. They slammed through 10 feet of reinforced concrete like a fist through drywall, coming to rest deep inside the bunker structure. The fuses had a precise 0.8-second delay. The goal wasn't just to blow a hole in the bunker, it was to cook everything inside. That delay allowed the warheads to penetrate deep before detonating, trapping the blast wave. It's the difference between opening your oven and setting off a grenade inside it. One makes a lot of noise, the other turns your dinner into charcoal. When the high explosive finally went off, the shockwave had nowhere to go. The 5,000 psi pressure front hit the concrete walls and reflected back, amplifying its own destructive power. It didn't just break things, it shattered them. Concrete support columns snapped like popsicle sticks. The ceiling collapsed, swallowing the server racks whole. The shockwave shear force shattered the electronics, turning server racks into scrap metal. The network went silent. It was like pulling the plug on a regional data center. Russia's logistics were now in the dark, a catastrophic, instantaneous data death. The explosion wasn't big, but it was smart enough to make Putin call for an IT guy instead of a firefighter. The physical destruction was precise, but the chaos was total. OSINT sources later confirmed 12 high-ranking Russian officials were taken off the board. The servers were a total loss, wiping out an estimated 70% of the logistical data for the entire Moscow military district. A Starshield satellite passed overhead hours later, its imagery showing a crater whose blast profile perfectly matched the warhead's signature. The Russians could lie to their people, but they couldn't lie to physics. This is where a single tactical strike becomes a strategic masterpiece. That bunker was the backup brain for the entire war effort. When it went offline, the corporate structure of the Russian army began to crash. Orders to the front line stopped. Thousands of Russian guns across the Donbass, which rely on targeting data from a central network, fell silent. Convoys of trucks stalled on highways, waiting for orders that would never arrive. It was the Kerch Bridge disaster all over again, but this time the bottleneck was digital. The psychological impact was even greater. The attack proved that no one, not even in Moscow, was safe. This vulnerability came at the worst possible time, as a newly re-elected US administration was pressuring NATO allies to step up, leading to a fresh $2.3 billion in drone aid for Ukraine. The strike didn't just destroy a bunker, it helped sign the check for thousands more drones just like it. With a handful of real drones and an army of phantoms, Ukraine turned Moscow's impenetrable fortress into a punchline. The lesson is brutal. Don't brag about your billion-dollar hardware when your enemy has the lethal combination of ingenuity, audacity, and a bigger brain. In modern warfare, the winner isn't the one with the most expensive toys, it's the one who uses them with the most savage brilliance. Bye for now.